broadcast tonight as the Chanticleers take on the Eagles of Georgia Southern. Busy day. A lot of things happening nationally. A lot of NCAA stuff again. Another case where the NCAA is losing. They're the biggest group of losers that you could ever imagine. I mean, everything that they have done over all these years being shot down left and right. We'll touch on that coming up in a little bit. Word from South Carolina this afternoon, Miles Stute going to be out 2 to 3 weeks with a shoulder injury he suffered the other night. So that's a blow to the Gamecocks as they go to Arkansas. And a guy that's a veteran and a guy that can hit the outside shot. He's had his ups and downs. He hasn't been the purest of outside shooters this year, kind of up and down for him, but still big hole there for the Gamecocks. Big loss from the standpoint of minutes that he eats up and the things that he brings to the team. So they'll have to get by without him. That means he will not be around for Kentucky next Tuesday night either. So the Gamecocks going to have to make do with the others and hope that they can fill in that gap. Let's go ahead and welcome in Chris Bergen, who is courtside in Statesboro, Georgia, getting ready for Coastal Carolina and Georgia Southern tonight. Let me mention our phone number, 888-898-2525. South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number for you. As we'll welcome your phone calls along with Mike Morgan and Ben Portnoy tonight. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, guys. Hope things are well in Columbia, where we will actually be here in about 5 or 6 hours tonight. We're going to leave here from Statesboro after the game, drive to Columbia, spend the night, and then head up to Boone, try and get up the mountain while it snows tomorrow. Wow. So I'm excited. I am so excited. Like a kid at the candy store when I saw the forecast was supposed to be snow and like 7 degrees. It'll be a lot of fun this weekend up in the mountains. But interesting one here tonight for sure. And by the way, I think you're underselling how valuable Miles Stute has been to the team. I mean, percentage-wise, he's their best three-point shooter at 39%, third leading scorer. I mean, that's a significant blow in my mind to them, especially considering the way Lamont Paris likes to play that offense, where the three-point shot is a critical aspect of what they do. And for him to get hurt on a foul, which turned out to be a flagrant one, that's even more upsetting, you would think, from a Gamecock perspective, that he got hurt on a foul call, and he's going to have to sit out a couple of weeks. But, yeah, that's going to be a big absence for them for sure.
Yeah, I know he's important to the team. And again, not having him, you'd much rather have him than not have him for a variety of reasons. And he does give them the, another weapon from the outside, but I think he has been. I'm just looking here at his numbers. Like, let's see, against Missouri. Against Missouri, he was 2 for 5, 0 for 3 at Alabama, 3 for 5 against Mississippi State. These are all 3-pointers. 4 for 9 against Florida A&M. So yeah, I think you're probably right. I probably maybe undersold that a little bit, but I mean, it's not a loss that they cannot overcome with somebody off their bench. They've been starting Murray Boyles and bring Wright in off the bench. So my guess is they could bring Stephen Clark back into the lineup if they wanted to go bigger, or if they want to go smaller, they could go with Wright and replace him that way. And Wright gives you another guy that can shoot the three and has hit some big shots for them.
Yeah, and I think that's the way I would go. I would actually go with Jacoby Wright and insert him in place of Miles Stute, because he also gives you another perimeter defender. And I think he adds that aspect of being able to shoot the basketball and he can handle the team. I think that's probably the way you go. And then you can still go with Stephen Clark, bring him off the bench and stick him in there with, what do they call him, BBV? I think it's Osmond's Verdonk. His initials now is what they call him. But, yeah, I think you can go that route. And then bring Josh Gray in as well. But I don't think they need to continue to go big. I would go with Jacoby Wright, but we'll see how they handle things, especially against Arkansas, a team that's going to put a lot of pressure on you at their place on Saturday.
And, guys, one quick note there, a big difference to point out. Miles Stute is 6'6", while Wright is 6'2". So you got to think, we hear all the time Coach Paris talk about how his team is defensive first before offense. Well, that's a lot of size to have out on the perimeter to guard big guards on other teams that now you'll be without.
Yeah. I mentioned the NCAA and the continuing legal problems. The U.S. Department of Justice has joined the Attorney General of Ohio and 10 other states in a lawsuit against the NCAA that would allow for players to transfer more than once without penalty. So now the NCAA first, when all this happened, said, no, you're going to be penalized if you transferred more than once, if it wasn't a grad transfer. Then they caught so much flack, and I think they had a judge jump on them about that as well. So they dropped that for this year. That's why you're able to see some players transfer more than once and retain their eligibility. Now, they are trying to make this a permanent deal. They're trying to make this a permanent deal. And this is where I go back, guys, by saying, how are they going to reel anything in? We keep hearing coaches and administrators and others talk about they need guardrails. They need to reel some stuff in. But every time they try to put something in place, a court shoots it down. They find themselves caught up in a lawsuit or a decision that shoots it down. So until they get antitrust protection, because I guess the professional leagues, they have contracts with their players, and I guess those players are employees, but the colleges are so hesitant to get to the point where the athletes are considered employees. But I don't know how you can get around them not being employees, yet have the protections and the limitations that the pro leagues are able to have. How do you make that work?
The only thing you can do, Phil, is they're going to have to be employees, and you'll have to sign contracts, and they'll have to be held to those contracts. I mean, if the NCAA really wants to put some teeth in this and throw it right back at the courts, just go to the example that came out today about the Miami player. I think he's a tight end who has just announced he is coming back for his 9th. That's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. He's coming back for his 9th year of college athletics. If that's not the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, I'll throw another one at you, and I'll see it tonight. We got a situation here at Georgia Southern, a young man named Malik Tidwell. He is the first of any of his kind. He is playing on his 5th team in his 5th eligible season of college basketball. That's the first time that's ever happened at D1. So he's played at 5 different schools in 5 years, including Georgia Southern here. Those are 2 not extreme examples. They're ridiculous examples, and it's not what college athletics, whether you want to pay the kids or not, it's not what it was meant to be. I mean, if they want to continue to try and tell us these are student athletes, tell me how many degrees the kid at Miami has gotten since he's been there 8 years and about to play his 9th. And how many hours credit does Malik Tidwell have from going to 4 different and now 5 different colleges in 5 years?
Well, I would hope the dude at Miami's got at least 1. But it is Miami.
He should be a doctor right now, shouldn't he?
That's right. This guy could, he could do brain surgery and catch a touchdown pass for you all in the same weekend. Yeah. But, we've got to stop living in the past, people like you and me. We've got to stop living in the past, because sitting there and saying what it was supposed to be just doesn't carry water anymore. That's not a winnable argument. What it was supposed to be is no longer when it comes to athletics. What it was supposed to be is no longer. It's a different era. It's a different mindset. I'm still not sure how we got here in such a short amount of time, how we went from one way to this way. But this is what the colleges have pursued now, starting with the NIL and the connection with the transfer portal, John, all at the same time. And it's all about the competition, and the colleges under self-imposed pressure, believing that if we don't do it this way, well, the school down the street's going to do it that way, and we're going to fall behind. We're not going to be competitive. If we don't compete in the NIL space, and if we don't recruit heavily in the portal, we're not going to be able to be competitive. That is the mindset of pretty much everybody. About the only exception, to be quite honest with you, that I can think of, maybe there are others, is Clemson, in that they don't participate actively in the portal. Now, they do participate, of course, on the NIL side, but they don't they're not flamboyant about it at Clemson. You don't hear a lot of big figures being tossed around. You don't hear a lot of noise about what they're doing in the NIL space, but they definitely aren't participating and going after players in the portal. And I doubt they ever will, as long as Dabo Swinney is calling the shots, and as long as they remain viable as a football power. Now, rebounding next year, 2024, I should say, rebounding this year, next season, 2024, is going to be crucial for Dabo Swinney. This, you could say, kind of falls in line with, let me think if I get the year right. Pat, help me out. Maybe 2011, after they lost to South Carolina in 2010, and they did go and win the ACC and beat Virginia Tech, if I've got my years right. Help me out. But my point is, there was, growing dissatisfaction with Swinney at that time. He was losing to South Carolina. They weren't going to major bowls. They weren't winning big. And he came through that fire, and he made them what they are now. Now, I think there's a little bit of a different level of fire underneath them, in that since winning the national championship, both in terms of the polls, both in terms of what they've done on the field, they've regressed. And so now it's like maybe his biggest challenge since then to get Clemson back to where they're competing for the national championship in a playoff form, which will be a little bit easier because, of course, there's more teams going to the playoffs this year. That's why I think this year might be as crucial as one of those years that he was dealing with early in his career when there was some doubt as to whether or not he was really going to make it as Clemson's head coach.
All right, so I'll concede that everything you just said is perfectly correct. All right, if that is the case and we need to move forward, then let's treat college athletics as a job, because the kid at Miami clearly is. He's playing there for 9 years now. He doesn't have any designs on wanting to get out, it appears. He wants to stay as long as possible. So let's make it a job. Let's go ahead and pay them. Make them employees, and then the NCAA can say, here's what we're doing. We'll put you on a contract, and here's how we're going. If we're going to get into the new era, let's get rid of the ridiculous label of student athletes. Let's make them all professional athletes. We'll pay them directly. They're employees of the school, and they go out and represent the university in whatever sport they choose to play for however long they want to play. Because clearly, I mean, I think it.
Would you make them go to
ridiculous.
class? Would they have to take classes?
No, I don't see why. Are they taking classes now? I'll use I hate to pick on the young man, but he's a perfect example. How many classes do you think Malik Tidwell's had transfer in 4 years to come here to Georgia Southern, now playing 5 years to play 5?
Well, I would hope he's going to something. I mean, under the current rules, which are still in effect, I mean, we do have rules that are in effect. You do have to go to class. You do have to maintain a certain GPA. You do have to pass a certain number of hours. You do have to be making progress towards a degree, blah, 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 to be eligible to play. That seems to be have been swept under the rug as far as attention. Exactly. Nobody really pays attention to that stuff anymore. The NIL dollars, your TikTok followers, all of that has trumped anything else related to academics. Yes, I know the NCAA puts out their APR report, and the schools put out their APR standings and their number of graduates and all that sort of stuff, and that's all well and good. But, I mean, let's face it, that is not what people are paying for. They're paying for W's. They're not paying for diplomas anymore. It used to make them feel good that a guy got a diploma after being recruited and coming through on scholarship, and you help pay for that scholarship, and you help pay for that housing, and you help pay for feeding that individual. But now, it's a whole different world as I see it. No, others may disagree, Pat.
I do think a lot of Clemson fans might care about that, just because we want to talk about Dabo Swinney's reluctance to really buy into the transfer portal. Well, remember, Ross Taylor back early December pointed out that this past year, the football team had a 99% graduation rate. It was the highest of any Power 5 football program since they started really keeping good track of this back in 2018, 2019. And it's the highest ever recorded amongst public Power 5 football programs in the 19 years the NCAA has tracked that metric. So I do think Dabo Swinney would probably like to hang his hat on that a bit. Going back to what y'all are talking about.
But can I say one thing?
Yeah, go on, please. Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Who cares? Who cares? Does a single Clemson football fan who's paying NIL dollars for a quarterback or a receiver, who cares? Does he care if they get a degree? Seriously. Especially with the door open to transfer anytime to anywhere without penalty, with no thank you. for what everybody had done for you for that previous year. Who cares? Go play football, basketball, baseball, win games.
I do think that's fair. I do think a lot, though, do care. And also, you want to look at Clemson and South Carolina. A lot of players that have transferred out from Dabo Swinney's program did so as grad transfers. A number of the top guys that have gone to other places did get their degree, whether it was 3.5, 4.5, whatever years, and then they went elsewhere. But I feel like we don't really celebrate that as much anymore because it's no longer a distinction now that you can transfer without having to sit out a year. There used to be a very clear distinction. You either were an undergrad transfer, you had to sit out a year, or you were a grad transfer and you were immediately eligible. But now those lines have been blurred. So to your point, maybe people don't care as much. Maybe that was kind of the separating line between when people stopped or started and stopped caring. But back to what y'all were talking about for a minute ago regarding what's the answer here. I don't think any of us know for sure, but one thing I feel like I've mentioned a number of times and would love to throw out there again is at some point you treat the athletes as employees, and then you have to form some kind of collective bargaining agreement. There will have to be some type of system with all schools in the country, all student athletes, and they will figure out exact parameters, exact rules, if it'll be a guarantee of scholarship for 4 years, and if you transfer, you have to do X, Y, Z as a penalty, kind of like colleges or kind of like pro athletes and contracts. Or if it's a 1 year, like maybe players don't want to do that. Maybe the middle ground is 2-year guarantee scholarship. You have to stay somewhere at least 2 years. Then you can transfer somewhere after 2 years. I don't know, just spitballing here. But I think an easy way to help fund this and to stop asking fans to bend over and pay whatever the heck they have left after tickets, after it's whatever the hell all people want to pay. What about the media rights? What about all the money that schools are getting from TV deals? Why not use that and figure out how to put a certain percentage, negotiate what percentage of all that revenue goes to the players? Kind of like in professional sports, whether it's a 40-60 split, a 50-50 split, whatever. Well, you have these billions and billions of dollars coming into each Power 5 conference and a little less so to the other conferences. No offense, but you could use that money, allocate that to pay the players, and then that takes the responsibility out from the fans.
Chris, I know you got the slide. Final thoughts?
It's an interesting discussion. I hate to leave it. I think Pat brings up some interesting points, but I will leave it at this, and I think everybody would agree. A 6-6 coach who graduates all his players probably doesn't keep his job anywhere close to the length of time. An 11-1 coach who graduates, say, 50% of his kids does.
Fair point.
All right, man. Have a good call tonight. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, fellas. Yes, try to talk to you on the mountain.
Up on the mountain, take your skis with you. You snow ski?
I wish I knew how to ski.
You ever snow ski? You snow ski, Pat?
I haven't. I like to go have a nice glass of scotch in the warmth, and I'll wave to my friends as they go skiing by.
Yeah. Never done the slopes. I think I've ice skated like once, but I never let go of the handrail the whole time. I just sort of pulled myself around the outer part of the rink. I know one thing. When you fall on that ice, it's hard. I mean, that ice does not give. It hurts.
The extent of my education or knowledge on that is pizza slice and French fry. And that was from a South Park episode probably 15, 20 years ago. You French fry, put your feet straight out when you want to go fast, and you make it into a pizza. So you make like a triangle, and that's how you slow down.
That's great. That's great. All right, 888-898-2525, South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number. Here on Sports Talk, let's go ahead and take some phone calls. And coming up at 7:05, Mike Morgan will share his worldly thoughts. And then at 7:35, we'll have another edition of the Port Authority with Ben Portnoy, who's been very busy covering these NCAA developments today. And there were also more hearings today in Washington about what to do for the colleges, because the colleges are basically on their hands and knees begging for Congress to step in and fix their problem, which I'm not so sure that's a good thing to do. Andy in Columbia, you're up first tonight. Welcome in. It's good to have you with us.
First off, it's about time you had the doc on last night. Thank you very much.
Well, he's hard to reach. He's not as easy to get on as you think. Is that a dog? Is that a dog in the background?
Well, that's Finn's buddy.
Oh, what's his name?
Bailey.
Bailey?
Yes.
Okay. Nice.
Irish doggy.
Nice. What's on your mind?
Okay. Number one, regarding Studi. Hopefully, when he comes back from this arm injury or shoulder injury, we'll see some shooting that he hasn't been able to do all year. I mean, just like you said, he hasn't been that big of an impact on this team scoring-wise that we all were expecting him to be. So hopefully we'll see some improvement in shooting when his arm or shoulder.
Well, keep in mind, this injury was not impeding his shooting. He got hurt during the game, so he wasn't hurt.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I saw the injury.
Yeah.
He got hooked.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a hook on him trying to get a rebound on a free throw.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying that I'm hoping that from his shoulder being hurt, that it healing up might improve his shooting.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, nothing can make it worse than it's been, in my opinion, for what he came in as.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh on the young man.
Well, he's shooting overall at 43%. Which, yeah, I think that's way below what was expected. He is the leading three-point shooter on the team at .388. So he's 31 of 80 from three-point range. Would you expect him to be about 45% maybe? I think it would be fair to expect maybe 45%.
What was he shooting at Vanderbilt when he came in?
This is his second highest of any season he's had. As a sophomore, he shot 44.8 from the field. This year, he's 43.2. And that same year, sophomore year, he was 43.2 from three. This year, he's 38.7. Free throws, on the other hand, this has been his lowest season of his career at 63%.
Well, I'd like to see that jump in 5% of three-point shooting, because right now, as we all know, this team has been struggling mightily at the from the three-point arc. So, I think he was brought in as pretty much, the three-point dagger. And I don't think we've really seen that as much as we hoped to have seen it. Even though he has played well at times, I don't think he's played up to the expectation that some of us have hoped to see him play. That's just my opinion. But this team, I'll have to say this, has played much better as a whole than I think any of us have expected them to play this year. So I'll give that to Coach Paris.
Well, I don't think going into the season, you thought they'd be 14-3 after 17 games, 2-2 in the league. But they've got to, losing to Georgia at home, that was one that they could have won. Not going to say should, because those two teams match up pretty evenly. That wasn't a case where they were head and shoulders above an opponent and the opponent came in and beat them. That was a matchup with an opponent that was pretty much their equal in a lot of different ways, maybe even a little bit stronger inside with their big. Their big is good. And maybe with a little bit better outside shooting. But still at home, you kind of feel like you're going to win that game. So they let one get away. So now they got to go get another one on the road. Maybe Arkansas this weekend.
Well, you just said the bigs inside. I think that's one place that this team is really not as well put together as other SEC teams, is on the inside and the bigs. Josh Gray, we've all been hoping. But as we know, he comes in and he gets into pretty quick foul trouble. But you did say the other day, I think yesterday, about free throws. So remember in the Missouri game, he hit two of his free throws.
Yep.
But if he didn't hit those, we never would have seen an overtime game there.
That's right. He hit those two, but he missed, I think it was 5 the other night.
Yeah.
He's only playing about 5 minutes a game. And we talked about in the preseason that the inside part of this team was not all that dynamic, especially with a B.J. Mack who likes to live on the outside. We'll be right back.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
Here's tonight's forecast. Not as chilly as what we've had. We'll drop down to 36 this evening as a low. Tomorrow, it's a blend of sun and clouds, breezy conditions, a slight 20% chance we get a stray shower. The weekend is sunny but bitter cold with a Saturday high of 39 and a low dipping to 15 degrees. On Sunday, we'll climb to 43 as your high. I'm Cal Moss with your On Point local weather.
Hey, who wants to make a resolution they can keep? Let's resolve to eat better pizza. Come on, you can do it with the Mellow Mushroom Pizza Bakers. Let's start slow with the crust. We'll hand toss that spring water dough just for you. Then add the freshest ingredients and serve it hot. Now, lift it, lift it. You're doing it. It's a change of pizza lifestyle. Happy New You from the Mellow Mushroom in the Vista and on Sunset in Lexington.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters reporting Congress has sent President Biden a short-term spending bill that would avert a looming partial government shutdown and fund federal agencies into March. The House approved the measure by a vote of 314 to 108, with opposition coming mostly from the more conservative members of the Republican conference. Nevertheless, about half of Republicans joined with Democrats in passing the third stopgap spending measure in recent months. Lawyers for former President Trump are urging the Supreme Court to put a swift and decisive end to efforts to kick him off the 2024 presidential ballot over his efforts to overturn his 2020 election loss. In a written filing Thursday, Trump's lawyers called on the court to reverse a first-of-its-kind Colorado Supreme Court decision that said Trump should not be on the state's Republican primary ballot. More details at srnnews.com.
We don't get bitter cold too often, but when we do, we need to make sure we're being smart about it. My friends at Franklin Plumbing and Drain Cleaning want to remind you about some tips for freezing temps and your plumbing. It's pretty simple. Water expands when it freezes. If there's sitting water in your pipes, they can burst, and we don't want that. So here's some tips to avoid these issues when we have a serious freeze. And leave both the hot and the cold water dripping with a small, steady stream of water. Open up all the cabinet doors under your faucets, especially on the exterior walls. This lets the heat from the house get to the pipes under the sink. That keeps them warmer. Do this for every faucet on an exterior wall, even above the garage. And hey, disconnect your hoses from the outside spigots too. If you have any questions, call Josh and the gang at Franklin Plumbing and Drain Cleaning. And if you have any problems, well, they'll be quick to respond. Online, it's franklinplumbing.sc.com or give them a call, 799-2222. That's 799-2222. Hope you don't need them, but good to have them if you do. That's Franklin Plumbing and Drain Cleaning.
Are you willing to risk it all? The White House, the House, the Senate, total Democratic control. Because poll after poll shows that Donald Trump is the weakest candidate against Joe Biden. With President Trump's criminal trials and the liberal media's bias against him, we just can't risk 4 more years of Biden and Harris. The right choice, Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley crushes Biden by double digits, even in swing states Trump lost in 2020. Nikki Haley is a strong leader, a proven conservative fighter with real solutions to get our country back on track. Haley will unite Republicans and help them win up and down the ballot. Nikki Haley is our strongest candidate against Joe Biden. And with Nikki Haley, America can win again. Vote Nikki Haley.
AFC Action is responsible for the content of this advertising, paid for by AFC Action, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. AFCAction.com.
Have you ever walked in and looked at how beautiful a Lexington Discount Homes manufactured home really is? For more than 35 years, Lexington Discount Homes has helped families find home ownership with phenomenal customer service and a selection that fits your needs and your wallet. They have a huge variety of homes and prices. Come by and visit us at 1847 Augusta Highway or take a virtual tour online at LexingtonDiscountHomes.com. That's LexingtonDiscountHomes.com.
Hey, y'all, this is Ted from Flight Deck Restaurant. We'd like to invite you and your family to dine with us. We have a great menu that's sure to please your whole family. We have fresh cooked burgers, big juicy wings, blue plate menu featuring country cooking, oven-baked hoagies, fresh crisp salads, authentic Greek food like gyros, souvlaki, and baklava. We also carry 20 different premium cheesecakes and pies. Flight Deck Restaurant also has an arcade with 30 different games like Star Wars, Batman, Skee-Ball, Bass Wheel, Pac-Man, Galaga, and so much more. Flight Deck, your favorite family restaurant. Thanks, y'all, and God bless.
They were talking about NIL and all that. I just saw here where a couple of Clemson players, A.J. Hoffler and R.J. Mickens, just tweeted out within a couple of minutes of one another that they are partnering with the 110 Society. And that is labeled as the one-stop shop for all things Clemson NIL. I think this is the internal NIL at Clemson, the official NIL space for Clemson athletes. And so don't know what that means, partnering with the with the 110 Society, except I guess it means that, and I've seen a couple of stories written here recently trying to go inside the workings of these NIL operations. They've been pretty much to this point behind closed doors. There hasn't been a lot of transparency. And that's another question. You know, when a pro athlete, he signs a contract, it's publicized. How many years, how much he's going to make. What about with these college players and the deals that they sign with various companies that they are going to be representing through their NIL connections? That's the idea. I mean, the simple idea is a school has an NIL operation. I believe that eventually, my guess is these independent NIL organizations, the ones that cropped up from the very beginning, will eventually go away because the schools are taking the NIL operations internal. So I guess they have greater control over it. And now they might be combining efforts with some of these outside entities, but I think the idea is for the school itself to take over the NIL operation, which means, let's say you bring in player A who comes into the office and you negotiate a pact with that player. And I guess, how do you do it? Do you determine as a school how much you think the player is worth as a player, and you lay that sum on the table? Or does that player come back at you with a figure that he thinks he's worth based on what he does for the team, what kind of social media following he has, etc.? Once you reach an agreement on how much, I mean, do you guarantee it as an NIL organization? Do you guarantee that money once you reach an agreement? We're going to pay you $250,000, and then you go out and, of course, you've got people giving you money because you've been raising money for that sole purpose. But then you go out and try and find business owners who want this individual to represent them in the public light in terms of interviews or personal appearances or advertisements. And how do you, I mean, to me, there's a lot of darkness there about how things are done. And my point is, why is this not all out in the open for everybody to see? You know, the comeback has always been, you know, these are student athletes and thus it's protected information. You know, it's like their medical records, I guess. It's protected information. They're not employees, da-da-da-da-da. But they sure are being treated like employees. They sure going to get 1099 forms every January, and they're sure going to have withholding either on their own, or they're certainly going to have an accountant to work with them, or they're going to be in a world of mess. So,
and that is where it gets tricky, Phil. And I don't know the exact answer to this because I guess it's a private. Is it any different than if another student athlete or any college kid or any adult or anybody gets a job for a different company? That's not public data. I mean, what we make on this show is not public data. What I make in my private job isn't public data. But that's where I get confused. Is this technically private donations, I would think, or is it public? Because I don't know where we have that line. What is public information and what is private? But to move forward another step, and I appreciate everything you were just saying, I also wonder about the darkness. And so I'm reading here, familiarizing myself with the 110 Society. And it looks like a man named C.D. Davies is serving as its general manager after spending the last 2 years working as the NIL coordinator for Clemson football. Previously, Davies was a longtime executive in the banking industry, serving as CEO for City Mortgage, Lending Tree, and Wachovia Mortgage. Heavy hitter, big-time player. And I'm not trying to insinuate anything, and I hope this comes across the right way. First of all, it's great to have somebody with that kind of experience in charge here, because I would imagine you're dealing with a lot of money. But the dark part that I do wish, like you, was maybe a little bit more publicly accessible is I just hope these young men and women are not being taken advantage of. I'm not saying that's what's happening. Please don't infer otherwise. But I just hope that, like, what does he get out of that? What is his cut? Is he retired? Or why would you leave from these major corporations to now come represent something at a university? well, there obviously must be a reason aside from just like your love of Clemson. Again, not trying to infer anything. I just genuinely hope all across the country these student athletes are not being taken advantage of, and this is all being done above board. But until we actually have firm lines in the sand and more stringent rules from the NCAA or whomever, the conference, what is the percentage being taken? None of us know any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I don't know how all this is working. I haven't, we're on the outside. I just found it very interesting. I mean, there's got to be something in it for all these people who jumped into the NIL world other than just trying to be philanthropical.
Exactly.
I mean, they got to be
they're getting something,
getting a cut, because these outside NIL operations, they just came out of nowhere. It's like they were waiting in the weeds for the courts to do what they were going to do to force the hands of the colleges. And all of a sudden, all these businesses came up to represent this guy and represent that guy. And you saw where announcements that we've signed so-and-so, and okay, but what are you getting out of it? I mean, are you doing this for nothing? Right. Are you doing this because you love your school and you think you're helping your school? Okay, well then, we tip our cap to you if you're like that. But I got to think other people have been greasing their palms here a little bit. There's got to be something in it, I think. And that goes back to the darkness about all this. How is it being handled? How's the money moving? What's the trail? Who's doing all the accounting work, et cetera, et cetera?
How many stories have we heard about professional athletes? The first name that comes to mind to me is Tim Duncan, and had people, financial analysts or whatever, whomever that person was, that he was entrusting with tens of millions of dollars. I might have this wrong, but I don't remember if he was embezzling it. But either way, it was being misappropriated. We've heard about countless, or I don't say countless, but a lot of professional athletes over the last however many years, decades, that were taken advantage of by those that they trusted, whether it was the accountant, financial analyst, advisor, whatever. Well, those are adults. Those are full-on adults that have had other means of income, other jobs. These are college kids or college young men and women that many of which this might be their first job. It may be their first time earning an income, and it's a heck of a lot more in certain situations than other college folks are getting. And so, again, to your point, how is that all working out?
Yeah. And also, to me, it opens a door for a lot more people to have their hands in your business. Because think about this. Anybody that you're dealing with regarding money that they're giving you or money that they're raising for you, they want a little something back in return. I'm not saying everybody, but I think it's human nature. You raise money, you give money, you want a little something back at some point in time. Maybe you want to talk to the athletic director about the head coach, or maybe you want to visit with a coach about a player or two. I don't know, just something. I just see under the current structure a lot of ways that wires can get crossed here. And we've seen some issues already, a little bit. I'm not saying it's been terrible, but we've seen some issues crop up. I think more will happen as time goes on unless they come up with a solution so that there are rules that work within the law. I mean, that's what they've got to deal with now. They've got to deal with courts who are shooting down everything that the NCAA has used to govern their schools over all these years. All right, let's go to Hank in Columbia for our next phone call. Hank, welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
Hey, Phil. And Pat, I was calling in this because I think with this topic y'all are talking about, there's been too much looked at these athletes are this or these athletes are getting this. And you posed a question 2 segments ago. You said, how did we get here? And we got here not because of the athletes and not even because of the courts. We got here because of the schools. Everybody likes to shoot out that NCAA, but we got here because of the schools. And my reasoning for that, and I go back to years of when you were talking, going back, listening to your show now for almost 30-something years, Corn.
You were listening while you were in the crib? That was great.
Oh, man, I was.
Your parents, your parents took good care of you, educated you.
I remember, I'm probably your age. But I remember when you used to do the Sunday night recruiting show before the National Signing Day, and you could almost announce everyone's recruiting class.
Yes, I could.
You remember that?
Yes, I could.
You remember that?
Yeah.
You remember that Sunday night show?
I was a lone wolf. I was a lone wolf.
Yeah, just you.
Pretty much.
Sound like you were in a dark cave, but you would say, "This is what the recruit's going to look like."
Yep.
February, the first Wednesday in February. But it's the adults in the NCAA, because the NCAA are the colleges, and that's what's put there. And if I go and use your ideology from way back when, because there was a time when athletes came in, they chose whatever major they wanted to be in, they practiced, they came back in summer 2, they started to work out. But most of the time, you would go downtown and you go into a Staples and you'd see an athlete or 2 working in there. You would go to an Eckerd's and you see a Melvin Page in there working behind the desk at an Eckerd's drugstore or CVS drugstore. And then schools and the NCAA started allowing these coaches to have the year-round workouts. No longer did the kid go home for the first part of the summer or second part of summer. The kid went home for the 3 weeks after graduation in May, and in June he was back on the clock. And then you also had the thing where you went away from games were either 1 o'clock or 7 o'clock. So now you had the Thursday night game. During basketball, you had the games that started at 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Remember, they used to do that 24-hour marathon.
Oh, yeah, basketball. Yeah, opening night every year.
Kids playing
Midnight
3 o'clock
Madness.
in the morning. Yeah, because we let the money in the colleges let the money in because they were pouring all that money so that the colleges could elevate all these coaches' salaries.
Well, I said a couple of weeks ago. I said a couple of weeks ago. I said, who is to blame? We did a segment on who is to blame, and basically, we're all guilty. We're all guilty. We're all guilty because
and we had control.
But I mean, we're all guilty because we're as guilty as the next. Because as fans, take off the media hat, but as fans, people who love college athletics, I mean, we buy the tickets, we watch the games on Tuesday night, we watch the games on Wednesday night. As long as those games are creating an audience and they're able to sell the advertising and make the money as part of the big packages, they're going to do it, and they're going to continue to expand on it. I said when they televised the first high school game back when Clowney was in one of the first high school games to be nationally televised. Maybe not the first, but he was one of the first. And back then you might have one high school game being televised in a season. And I said, you wait and see. I mean, this thing is you're going to find more and more high school games being televised. And, you know, look what's happened since now. Now you've got a regular schedule of high school games, both in terms of local telecasts, the national telecast. Now, is it bad? I don't know. Does it hurt teams at the gate? Are they getting paid for everything? I'd heard for the most part is the schools don't make any money off of their high school games being televised. They don't get anything back to help pick up for the expenses that they incur or the loss of ticket sales that they might incur as a result. So, but again, that's not going to change because, I mean, people believe, people who make decisions believe the sports world just totally revolves around television, and it's somehow television makes an event bigger and better than it already is.
Perfect example, real quick, Hank, perfect example here. It's on a professional level, though, but look what just happened, last weekend? This is in the NFL, but how many of us voiced publicly our complaints about the NFL putting the Chiefs and Dolphins, probably the most exciting game of that weekend, and they put it on Peacock exclusively, where hardly anybody has an account with Peacock. Thank you again, Corn, for letting me use yours. Now they do. But we kind of did it to ourselves as football fans. The NFL knew, like, hey, y'all are going to complain. You're going to complain and moan all you want, but we're going to dangle this in front of you. And we know you guys are so addicted to what we're supplying here that you're going to go out and do it anyways. And so now we've given them the green light to continue to do that. Same kind of concept.
24 million. They had 24 million reasons to do it.
Views, Well, this is one thing, Corn, is this. They had a chance to control this before. You know, that's why when I said, they keep on saying the courts did it to him. When Ed O'Bannon filed that lawsuit, he filed it, they lost, and they had all these years to go in, and they could have just started out a thing where, each athlete's able to get $10,000 from the school if the school will agree to do it, agree to give it to them and all that. And everybody would have done it just for recruiting purposes. And if they'd done that, the athletes, starting at that point, would have been happy as heck at just doing that and just their own little individual things, because they weren't getting anything before. When they went these year-round workouts and all that stuff, they weren't increasing the money in scholarship. They gave you that cost of living, but they weren't increasing what the athletes had already been getting when the athletes could go home for the summer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that. They pedaled around.
We got to run. Thank you. You're right with what you're saying. I will say this. I still believe, and I'll always believe, that a good trade-off for most of the time that we've had college athletics, an excellent trade-off was your college scholarship and everything that went with it. Now, the NCAA went too far, of course, with their silly rules, and nobody said anything or did anything about it, because the schools are the NCAA. They make the rules. They sit on the panels. They vote on it. They discuss it. They decide it. So they did it themselves with their crazy rules, like you can't hand a kid a hot dog, or you can't have a certain kind of, I'm making some things up, but a certain kind of ice cream. I mean, all just the over-the-top attempt to regulate honesty, I guess, and regulate across the board evenness with all the schools. And it just couldn't be done. And the athletes paid the price because you kept asking more and more of them, and you were taking more and more away. So yeah, that was wrong. That was terribly wrong. Still believe having your college scholarship and everything with it paid for, if you stayed at a school for 4 or 5 years and they covered everything that you were doing, from the scholarship and your health and your travel, there should have been a stipend established in there. There should have been a clothes allowance. You should have allowed parents to travel on your dollar, et cetera. So if you had done things like that, you wouldn't be in the situation that you're in now. Be right back.
Touchstone Energy cooperative members save more on electricity. And members save more on insurance, groceries, healthcare, restaurants, travel, concerts, and sporting events through Co-op Connections. Touchstone Energy is an alliance of the member-owned electric cooperatives. And as a member, the power is yours. Experience the power of co-op membership with Touchstone Energy and find out how much you can save on electricity and a whole lot more at touchstoneenergy.com.
Last year was a big year for Founders Federal Credit Union and our amazing members. A total of $30 million was given back to qualifying members in the form of loyalty bonus dividends, proving once again that it pays to be a Founders member. Founders is also committed to pouring time and resources into the local communities we serve. If you aren't a member yet, what are you waiting for? Join Founders today. Visit foundersfcu.com. Federally insured by NCUA. Membership qualification required.
Call Lawyer Lisa. Experience the difference with Lawyer Lisa.
Hi, this is Lisa Hostettler-Brown. Do you know the difference between a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust? The difference could easily save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in long-term care costs. Visit lawyerlisa.com to schedule a consultation today.
Call Lawyer Lisa. Experience the difference with Lawyer Lisa.
7511 St. Andrews Road, Irmo, South Carolina.
Daddy, you need a trust.
Hi, yes, I'll have the club sandwich and house salad.
You got it, sweetie. I'll throw in a pair of designer sunglasses as well.
Just lunch, thanks.
How about a week at my boss's oceanfront villa?
What?
When you join the South Carolina Education Lottery's Players Club, you get way more than you expect. More chances, more wins, and more surprises.
Today's special, a trip to low Earth orbit in a private spaceship.
Join the Players Club at seeducationlottery.com, because more happens here.
When trouble comes like the accidents do, we all get sick and the bills pile too. There's only one number that can help see you through. And if you're healthy, here's what you should do. Call 605-7905. That's the number that you need to know. 605-7905. $0 deductible. What's the deductible, you say? That's the price you have to pay before the insurance will say we'll help you. They keep that number out of reach because they know that you won't reach that number because they know you're healthy. 605-7905. $0 deductible. 605-7905. 727 is the area code.
All right, coming up on the top of the hour here on Sports Talk, 888-898-2525. That's our number. We go to Keith in Camden, next with us here on Sports Talk. Welcome, Keith. How are you?
I'm doing great, Phil. Hope you are too.
Yes, sir.
You know, just listening to the conversation, I think, you know, I had tickets for 38 years and decided I'm done. And just sitting here listening tonight, you know, you're right. We all have been a part of the problem. When I said I'm done and quit buying, you know, tickets, all I did was go to the home experience, bought a 96-inch TV, and, you know, feeding the
96 inches.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm exaggerating. It was big. Let's put it that way. I figured what I was giving the university, I could afford a TV.
There you go.
But you know, so I'm to blame too. But what I've seen since this NIL, I'm guilty. I watched Carolina, I watched Clemson, but I didn't watch nearly the games that I used to. And at the end of the day, we're all guilty. But I tell you, nothing's going to change. There's going to be a certain amount of teams. They're going to do whatever they have to do to be successful. But what will change the fan base is you look at the schedule next year. You have a couple of 5 and 7 years, and we just mediocre, you know, in the middle of the pack. That will influence people. It may not change the national thing, but it will affect the university. And you're right; they're guilty of it. President Ray Tanner, all the athletic directors, but nobody ever asked them those questions.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a hot mess. But you know, I'm just as guilty as everybody else. But you know,
well, you're not alone. You're not alone because
I'm done with it.
I saw a release today from the Gamecock Club, which is still in existence, and their release was about their great success in 2023 and the record numbers that they enrolled in the Gamecock Club and the record giving and all that. So, hey, you know, this new age, this is apparently something that they like and they want to see it done this way. And the Gamecocks have been selling out their games. Clemson have been selling out their games. I mean, right now there's really, except for us not liking it and liking the change, there's really nothing to complain about as far as the school is concerned. People are buying tickets. People are giving their money. People are watching on television. You need to put a good winning product on the field or things will change. But right now, it's all positive.
WQXL Columbia, W264DF.
From the Bart Fireside Studio, the solution for keeping you warm this winter.
This is 107.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting. A Georgia judge has set a hearing to explore allegations that the Fulton County District Attorney prosecuting former President Trump has been in a romantic relationship with a special prosecutor in the case.
A hearing date's been set after a defense lawyer representing a former Trump staffer filed a motion last week saying the entire election fraud case is tainted. Attorney Ashley Merchant alleges the district attorney, Fonnie Willis, has been involved with an attorney, Nathan Wade, creating a conflict of interest. Willis defended her hiring of Wade, but did not comment on reports of a romantic relationship. Donald Trump and 18 others have been indicted by a Fulton County grand jury, accused of participating in a scheme to illegally overturn his 2020 election defeat. I'm Jackie Quinn.
House committee members heard tearful testimony today from people affected by illegal immigrant crimes. Josephine Dunn, whose daughter Ashley died of a fentanyl overdose, accused Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas of hurting her family.
In my humble opinion, Mr. Mayorkas' border policy is partially responsible for my daughter's death. His wide open border policy allows massive quantities of poisonous fentanyl into our country.
The testimony is part of GOP efforts to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas. Congress has sent President Biden a short-term spending bill that would avert a looming partial government shutdown and fund federal agencies into March. The House approved the measure by a vote of 314 to 108. On Wall Street, the Dow by 201 points, the Nasdaq rose 200, the S&P advanced 41. More at townhall.com.
Relief Factor, pain relief that's natural, pain relief that works, and pain relief that attacks the source of the pain. That's the experience of tens of thousands of Americans who are taking Relief Factor right now. See their incredible video endorsements at relieffactor.com and then order your 3-week quick starter pack for just $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Find out if it can work for you like it works for me by ordering your 3-week quick starter pack today. Relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Be the next success story.
Laura Trump provides a fresh and honest perspective on the issues that matter to you on the Right View podcast, now available on the Salem Podcast Network.
The number of Americans, and I think this is part of the problem right now, the number of Americans getting their news from TikTok quadrupled in the past 3 years. It really kind of terrifies me for what is to come for this country.
Subscribe to The Right View on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, Rumble, or at SalemPodcastNetwork.com.
Tomorrow is the annual March for Life in Washington. Thousands brave the cold of the D.C. winter every year to show their support for the unborn. House Republican Conference Chairwoman Elise Stefanik says the lower chamber is bringing 2 bills to the floor to provide information and resources to pregnant students and their parents to combat manipulation by the pro-abortion Democrat agenda.
This week, House Republicans will bring to the floor the Pregnant Students' Rights Act and the Supporting Pregnant and Parenting Women and Families Act to support critical pregnancy resource centers and provide necessary information to pregnant students, combating manipulation by the far left's radical pro-abortion agenda.
House Republicans will welcome hundreds of thousands of their constituents proudly participating in the March for Life tomorrow. That march originally started to commemorate the Roe versus Wade decision. News and analysis at townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
Here's tonight's forecast. Not as chilly as what we've had. We'll drop down to 36 this evening as a low. Tomorrow, it's a blend of sun and clouds, breezy conditions, a slight 20% chance we get a stray shower. The weekend is sunny but bitter cold with a Saturday high of 39 and a low dipping to 15 degrees. On Sunday, we'll climb to 43 as your high. I'm Cal Moss with your On Point local weather.
It's not easy being a veteran.
Coming back from Iraq or Afghanistan, I had been so excited to come home. But it's harder than I thought.
Join us at communityofveterans.org
and connect to others who are going through the same thing.
Brought to you by Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Sports Talk on the Sports Talk Media Network. You can reach the guys with the South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number, 888-898-2525. That's 888-898-2525. Now back to Phil, Chris, and Pat with the second hour of Sports Talk on the Sports Talk Media Network.
Back we are, big Thursday edition of Sports Talk. Sports Talk Media Network. Phil Kornblutz, Pat Daniel here in Columbia, Chris Bergens in Statesboro, Georgia. He is doing that Coastal Carolina, Georgia Southern game. Just a moment, Mike Morgan will be with us for another edition of Morgan on the Move. Of course, is brought to you by, on Thursday nights, by Gary Patterson, State Farm agent for 35 years. Gary's been serving the real estate needs from Lugoff to Lexington, Columbia to Blythewood, auto, home, life insurance, business insurance. They can all be handled by Gary Patterson. When Gary's not refereeing ACC football games, he's spending countless hours helping South Carolinians with all their insurance needs and making a difference in his community. Go check out Gary Patterson Net today. That's GaryPatterson.net, GaryPatterson.net, and Gary will go over the best plans for you and your family. That's GaryPatterson.net. All right, Mike will be with us in just a second, and we will find out what is going on inside his fertile brain as he makes the rounds doing a college basketball primarily around the SEC. In the meantime, we'll update some scores. Winthrop is leading Asheville by a 10-5 count. Charleston, College of Charleston, is on top of Towson, 8-7. Make that Towson is on top of Charleston, 7-5. 5 look like an 8. Towson leading 7-5. Georgia Southern, the 5-3 lead on Coastal Carolina. There you go with some of the early scores, and we'll be keeping a watch on that for you the rest of the hour. Ben Portnoy at the bottom of the hour. We got some recruiting to work in as well. If you're just joining us, we had a very good conversation in the first hour talking about, once again, the various ills of the NCAA and why we are where we are in this situation with college athletics. We had no answers, and we had no good advice. We just talked it out and left it where we found it, which is like right in the middle of a tornado. All right, so Mike is with us now. Again, brought to you by Gary Patterson Insurance and by...
Sponsored by Love Chevrolet. No hassles, no all-day runarounds, no ridiculous add-on stickers. At Love Chevy, buying a car is fun. South Carolina's #1 volume Chevy dealer. I-26 at Harbison and at lovechevy.com. Find new roads.
Yeah, the man's got so many sponsors we have to do too for him here on Sports Talk just to pay the phone bill. Mike Morgan on the move with us now here on Sports Talk. Welcome in. It's great to have you with us. And first of all, fill us in on your travels. Where have you been and where are you going?
Well, I just got back from LSU. Had LSU Ole Miss last night. It was a pretty thrilling game. LSU was just better. Matt McMahon is going to build something special in Baton Rouge. It's just going to take time. But I promise you, he is a good coach, and they're going to be a problem for some folks this year. And then I go to Kentucky Saturday, Rupp Arena. It'll be the Kentucky Wildcats against the Georgia Bulldogs, who, of course, just snuck out of Columbia with a win. Mike White's done a really good job, and it's one of the better stories because I can tell you in my travels to Gainesville for games over the years, Mike White took a lot of heat from people, and there's a lot of people that wanted him fired, and he saw that and said, you know what? The hell with you. You don't have to fire me. I'm going to quit and take the Georgia job. And kind of an ultimate blank you moment that I think a lot of people in the workforce wouldn't mind having with one of their bosses at some point or another. But no, I mean, Georgia's really been a great story. I've said this all along, and I'll continue to say it. Georgia, Ole Miss, and South Carolina are the most improved teams in this league. The problem for those three teams and everybody else is that the top is still the top. Like Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama are all really good. And I don't know if I'd want to play Arkansas right now either, because eventually they're going to figure some things out and be better. Missouri is still a challenge, even though they're not as good as last year. There's just not, other than Vanderbilt, there's not a weak link right now. So it's again, it's a brutal, brutal league.
What has happened to Vandy?
That's a good question, and probably a longer answer than your audience would care to hear. But I mean, basically, the off season got off on the wrong foot, where a bunch of their key players left, and then that's the one team I haven't had this year, and I haven't seen who they brought in, but I don't know if there's any impact guys there. You know, this is not so far a recruiting class or a portal class that has paid off great dividends. The record says that. So, you know, after a long year in football for Vanderbilt, it might be a long one in basketball. Now, maybe Jerry turns it around. Look, he's had teams that have gotten off to slow starts and then really kind of figured things out late. Maybe that's his team, but I'm not sure. They just have not been able to get anything going whatsoever.
Alabama, Nate Oates. He's a bit of a hothead. He doesn't mind sticking his nose right there in the fan, but dude can coach. And, I mean, he lost terrific talent off of last year's team, 2 guys that went to the draft, you know, but he's replenished his roster, and they're right back there once again among the best. They're 4-0 in the league. Auburn's 4. How about the state of Alabama? 2 teams that are 4-0. We'll get to Auburn in a second, but what about Nate Oates and what he's able to do, continue to do at Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, look, I just had Auburn a week ago, and you know, I said this on the air. That is as good a turnaround as there's been in college basketball in the last 30 years. People have to remember how bad Auburn was, and nobody cared about basketball there. We ran a stat. Their average RPI 10 years previous Pearl was like 167, 187. And in the last 6-7 years under Pearl, it's 25. It's a Scott Drew like reclamation project. Alabama, not quite as bad, but the 2 hires they made with Avery Johnson and Anthony Grant, they didn't work out. And Nate Oates comes in there and turns them into a national power seemingly overnight. So the state of Alabama, you know, for a time you could have said Alabama was very similar to what South Carolina was years ago, where it didn't seem like either of the major programs was doing anything good. Now Alabama has become, you've got 2 powerhouses there led by Bruce Pearl and Nate Oates. So I know a lot of people don't like those 2 coaches, but the fan bases of those respective schools love them and realize what a good thing they have.
Well, it sounds like Pearl has sort of tightened the ship there at Auburn. I mean, yes, he's had his issues and he's had his penalties imposed upon him, but he's been pretty much walking the straight and narrow at Auburn as far as we know. Then again, who has to walk the straight and narrow anymore? You can, everything that these coaches used to get in trouble for, you can do now. Until
That's right.
Well, you know, here's the funny thing though, Mike. I mean, this Florida State situation where the NCAA comes in and levies penalties on Florida State, and I mean, really, they could do that to 75 schools across the country because they're all using NIL in recruiting, and that's what they came down on Florida State for, by and large, for taking a guy to go visit a guy to go get his NIL deal. And don't tell me that, you know, every SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, and what's left of the Pac-12, they're not all doing the same thing now. Not to mention, I'm sure your schools the next step down who've got some boosters giving money are doing the same thing. Well, how do you get away just hammering Florida State? And I say hammering, I mean the penalties aren't going to destroy the program. They're going to sting a little bit. But, I mean, how do you even go about singling them out over the entire field of violators?
Yeah, it is unusual. I mean, we're just not used to seeing it anymore or caring about it anymore because we know, and coaches have told me point blank off the record, this is not NIL. We're buying players, quote. End quote. And that's exactly what's going on. And everybody knows it. So we can continue to play this charade, but it's pure pay for play and pay for stay. That's what we created. That's the Pandora's box we opened. And unlike a true professional rank where players are getting paid. We have no definitive contracts. We have nobody honoring that much of anything. I mean, it's crazy. I maintain it's the biggest reason why Nick Saban left the sport at 72 as opposed to 78. Coaches, even the successful coaches, think it's wrong the way we're doing this, but that's what it is. How Florida State got dinged, I honestly don't know. I don't understand it.
Do you think, as somebody who watches all this college football, basketball, baseball up close, traveling the country, and of course you do pro games as well, but I mean, the college game, as far as how we're dealing with the athletes, is becoming closer and closer to the pro game. So do you think it will in any way negatively impact the product on the college level? And do you think in any way it's going to negatively impact the fan interest? I mean, I would say so far, I would argue the very small sample that we've got here in the first couple of years, it's done neither. I don't think the product has been hurt. I don't think the fan interest has been hurt. If anything, it might be even stronger.
Yeah. No, I think the product has never been healthier. I mean, if you just go on ratings and revenues, my goodness, college football and men's basketball have never been this popular. Now, that doesn't mean people don't hate the fact that I used to know what my roster was every year, and now I don't. I used to think that player really loved my university, and now it feels like he's nothing more than a hired gun, a vagabond that's in there for as long as he can make a buck and then leave for the guy that offers another buck. I think it's unmatched popularity, unmatched product, but also unmatched cynicism by the fan base. It's like, you're in this relationship and it's the best thing out there, but boy, the flaws they get a little bit bigger and bigger with time. It's like you, Phil. I mean, for crying out loud, put down the toilet seat. At some point, that's gonna run a relationship into the ground. But here's the good news. The love is so strong in the Cord-Blued household that's not going to affect it. And in fact, you guys have never been better. That's the best analogy I can make.
Well, can you take a moment out of your time and explain what the use of the phrase "put down the toilet seat" is referring to? I'm really lost trying to gather in what that actually, is pointing towards. Oh, wait a minute. Does that have to do with men and women? Like,
yes.
I put the toilet seat down all the time. As soon as.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. But you're saying
that's why you've been married for 40 years.
I got it. Well, what do you do? Now, you're a married man of many years. I mean, what do you do?
Well, I installed an electric device where I just hit a button and it happens automatically.
You got one of those French things. You got one of those French things?
Yeah, dueling bidets just to pass the time. But no, your question is a great one, and it is. I think that a lot of fans that are frustrated want to say, "Oh, this is what I was afraid of. This is why I don't like pro sports. I'm out. I'm protesting. I'm boycotting." But the fact of the matter is, and the people that run the sport know this, the fans of college athletics are the most passionate on the planet, and they're not going anywhere. They're just not. If you are a Gamecock or a Tiger fan, you are going to either attend, watch, or listen to every football game, and probably most basketball and baseball games, and in some cases, women's basketball. That's just the way the college football fan is wired. And so I don't think, even with all the nonsense going on around the sport, I don't think the product on the field and the court, honestly, have really suffered. The athletes have never been better, and the coaching has never been better. So it's this weird thing where you've got a tidal wave of really good stuff and this wave crashing against it of some chaos that you're worried, how's that going to affect the product? It hasn't affected it enough to take away any of the popularity of the sports that we love.
Mike Morgan joining us here on Sports Talk. And Mike, trying to get us back on the rails here after that fantastic toilet conversation there. But switching gears to football a little bit, and you being in Atlanta, I think you might be able to speak on this a bit. It might not be the local team for most of our fans here, myself included, to go Panthers. But with the Falcons, reports coming out this afternoon that the Falcons will be performing a second interview with now former Patriots coach, that's weird to say, Bill Belichick, this coming weekend. My question for you is, what would happen if the Falcons blow a 2-interview lead on hiring Bill Belichick after what happened in the Super Bowl a few years ago?
I see what you did there. 28-3, 2-0. I got you. Look, I don't know if the Falcons are able to pull him in. It's totally an Arthur Blank versus the field win. Like, it's not because Bill Belichick wants to be in Atlanta. And it's not because Bill Belichick looks at Desmond Ridder and says, yeah, that's a franchise quarterback. It would be a very bizarre hire in a bizarre situation where they still don't have, in my eyes, a true starting NFL quarterback that can take you to the promised land. And Bill Belichick doesn't seem to me like a guy who wants a 2-3 year rebuild. So that tells me maybe the market is not that strong for a 71, 72-year-old head coach who hasn't done a whole lot in New England the last couple of years since a guy named Tom Brady left. If it happens, it won't shock me. If it doesn't happen, it won't shock me. Living in Atlanta, I'd love to see it. It would, I think, a fan base that has been tortured through 3 or 4 consecutive mediocre coaches is ready for something different and established. But I have a feeling Bill is waiting to see what else is out there, too.
One more question for you, Mike. Switching gears again now to college basketball. Sticking here with the South Carolina men's Gamecock program. Currently 14-3 overall, 2-2 in the SEC. They have right at 14 games left, all SEC games. Trying to think what the magic number might be. If they were to go 7-7, so finish 500 then in the conference at 9-9, and they would be 21-10 on the season, would that be enough to get it done? Or what in your mind would be a magic number for wins for the Gamecocks to get into the tournament?
Well, look, if you went 500 in the league and then you did a little damage in Nashville, then I feel pretty good about it. But here's where you get into trouble when you start saying magic number. Not all 9-9 conference records are the same. This is what a couple of Frank's teams, and they would point at how many wins. Yeah, but if you lose to a bad Georgia team 3 times, that's why you're not getting in the NCAA tournament. So you can't play the shell game of, look at how many wins we got. Just look at our good ones and ignore our bad ones. At Georgia at home, I want to tell you right now, that's not that bad a loss. Like, it's not like losing to Stetson, but it does set up a scenario where you really don't want to lose at home again, and you'd love to steal one on the road, much like you already did in Como. So I think that 500, around 500 is going to be good enough for most teams. But again, the devil's going to be in the detail. Who did you spring any quad one victories in league play? We know they stand at least 1 or 2 non-con. Did you beat Kentucky, Tennessee, and Auburn and Alabama, those quote unquote elite teams in the league, or did you just feast on the bottom third? All these things get baked into the equation, and that's why I say that there's no such thing as a magic number. The magic number is the net, and just keep your eye on that, and keep your eye on where they stand in that number, because even though it's not the final say, it is clearly their most important number as a guide as to which teams get in and which teams do not. And I would be more than leaning toward the fact that Carolina is going to be one of a few bubble teams in this league come March.
Yeah, they're sitting at 69. They've got 1 Q1 win and 2 Q1 losses. And they're going to play number 107 this weekend in Arkansas. But it is a road game. So if you can win it on the road, it won't be a Q1 win for you, but it'll be certainly better than a loss. But here's something that's kind of interesting. You talk about, Florida, which is 52 in the net. They are 0-5 in Q1 games thus far. 0-5. Yet, they're still 52, which isn't awful. For that matter, as I look down the list here, there's not a single SEC team Let me double check here before I say something. Yeah, there's not a single SEC team, Mike, right now that has a winning record in Q1 games. You got a couple who are 500. There's a 4-4. There's a 2-2, but there's a 1-1. Nobody has a winning record. Now, I know these numbers will change as teams move up and down, and those numbers will change. But that's kind of interesting that there's not a single SEC team with a winning record. You can use this in your broadcast. You don't have to credit me. I'm okay with it.
Okay,
you can,
sure.
Yeah, you can just
I steal your material all the time. You know this.
Just drop it in when you're talking to John Sunvelt about running the triple weave. Or who's your
It's John Sunvold, but yes.
Or the next time you're doing a broadcast with Dominique Wilkins too, just slide that right in there.
Yeah. Just drop it right.
Right in with me.
They'll be impressed with your homework. So
they will. That's a heck of a nugget.
Where are you this weekend?
I will be in Lexington. I will be at Rupp Arena.
That's right.
One of those teams that I think, when it's all said and done, will have the most quad one wins in this league is Kentucky. I've seen every team, like I said, except Vandy. Kentucky and Tennessee, to me, are the two most difficult matchups, and Auburn and Alabama are not far behind. But Kentucky, Georgia, I think will be a really entertaining game. We'll have that for you at 6 o'clock on the SEC Network. John Sunvold, who once competed against that, right? Competed against Larry Bird in a 3-point contest. True story.
Yeah.
I'm
sure he lost. Sure he lost.
Everybody lost when Larry was in it. In fact, Larry, when he tells the story how Larry went into the locker room and looked at Sunvold and the other 5 or 6 contestants, and he just kind of took a deep exhale and he said, "All right, fellas, who's finishing second?" And of course,
was that the time he said that? I mean, that's a very famous little line there. Sunvold was involved with that, huh?
Sunvold was in that 3-point contest and had Larry talking trash in the locker room to him and everybody else. Yes, he witnessed Larry Legend in the flesh.
I have said it before. I'll say it again since you're listening. I've said this on the record. Larry Bird, the most handsome athlete ever created. I'm serious. I mean, he just
clearly was an Adonis. Yes.
I mean, it's a different look. It's a different look, and it depends on how you appreciate a man's look. But in my eyes, the most beautiful man ever created.
Well, I think you should pass that along and maybe write him a letter.
No, I do have an autographed picture of Larry Bird.
Do you really?
Well, he gave it to somebody else to give to me, so it wasn't directly given to me. But yes, I do have a autographed Larry Bird picture.
Well, I'm jealous. Yeah. As a Larry Legend fan, I have a lot of paraphernalia. I do not have that.
Well, I'll make you a copy and send it to you.
That'd be great. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for that.
Safe travels, and we'll talk to you next week.
Okay, guys. Have a great weekend.
As Mike yawns at the end of the interview. Man. Was that a yawn or a deep breath, an exhale? He's gone. He's a quick dropper. He's a quick dropper of the line. You know those people that drop the line real quick?
Yeah.
That's him. All right, let's update basketball. We've got Winthrop 29, Asheville 27, Towson 26, and Charleston 23. Charleston's on a 10-game winning streak, 4-0 in the CAA. No longer the Colonial, but the Coastal Athletic Association. Georgia Southern 19-15 over Coastal Carolina. And we've got Michigan State 37, Minnesota 32. Memphis 29, South Florida 10. Speaking of South Florida, I was at the funeral yesterday for Art Baker. I told you, ran into Brad Scott and Jeff Scott, and they look well. They both are living up in Clemson or Seneca. In the case of Brad, I think Jeff might be living closer to Clemson. But I said, hey, when are you going to be back running that Clemson offense? He says, I'm happy doing what I'm doing right now, which is absolutely nothing. I said, I bet you are. I bet you are. But he's going to coach again somewhere. He's too young just to sit at home. He's got to get out and do something. I got to believe he's going to get involved with somebody somewhere before too long. And Clemson's right there in his back door. All right, we'll be back.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
Here's tonight's forecast. Not as chilly as what we've had. We'll drop down to 36 this evening as a low. Tomorrow, it's a blend of sun and clouds, breezy conditions, a slight 20% chance we get a stray shower. The weekend is sunny but bitter, bitter cold with a Saturday high of 39 and a low dipping to 15 degrees. On Sunday, we'll climb to 43 as your high. I'm Cal Moss with your On Point local weather.
Hey, honey, do you remember if Dad took his meds this morning?
You know, I'm not sure.
He isn't either. Keeping up with his meds is overwhelming.
You know, True Pharmacy packages medication. They showed me a sample, and it even separates them by date and time of day.
Something like that would be really helpful for Dad and for me.
Even better, it's free, just for being their customer. True Pharmacy, 1628 Charleston Highway and 3217 Devine Street, or TrueRxSC.com.
That's our news. I'm Keith Peters reporting a new layer of ice has formed over parts of Tennessee just days after a deadly, snowy, frigid storm as bitterly cold weather continues impacting the U.S. from Oregon to the Northeast. Tennessee officials updated the state's death toll to 14 at midweek after more than 9 inches of snow fell since Sunday in parts of Nashville, where only about half of that amount falls annually. Freezing rain began falling Thursday in Tennessee. Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Wallace is accusing the estranged wife of a special prosecutor she hired of trying to obstruct her election interference case against former President Trump and others by seeking to question her as part of the couple's divorce proceedings. On Wall Street, the Dow by 201 points. This is SRN News.
I've gone from being the skeptic to now emphatically endorsing the idea of solar power for your home or business. But make no mistake, my skepticism was legit because there's only one solar company I've come to believe in. That's Broker Solar. They're local. They're in Lexington. They're not door knockers and high-pressure salespeople. So what about those questions? Broker Solar answered them. How much does it cost? Who gets tax credits? Why should I get a solar battery in addition to solar panels? What type of warranty comes with such an important investment? Kim, Matt, and the team changed my skepticism to confidence. I've been to their job sites, and I am in awe of how the technology has evolved. I'm so impressed with the workmanship from Broker Solar. I've talked to their customers. It all makes so much sense now. Oh, and listen, these politicians, the media's attempt to guilt you with green this and save the planet that, that's not why you want solar power. You want it because it really will save you money. It really gives you control of your power bill instead of the power companies. Hey, find out more online at brokersolar.com or just give them a call, 807-7417. That's 807-7417.
Thinking about investing in a hot tub? Great idea. Hot tubs offer relaxing hydrotherapy for tired muscles and stressed minds. But beware, all spas are not the same. At Jack Oliver's Pool Spa and Patio, we offer hot spring and free flow spas exclusively for their quality, energy efficiency, and affordability. And we have everything to keep your spa and pool sparkling, clean, and crystal clear. Come see it all at Jack Oliver's Pool Spa and Patio. Forest Drive at jackoliverpools.com.
You want to remodel. Actually, you need to remodel. I'm Eddie Springer of Treycal Builders, and with us, remodeling is easy. Whether it's your kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, or even the whole house that needs an upgrade, at Treycal, we'll help you every step of the way. We do first-class work quickly, cleanly, and affordably. Call 360-8211, 360-8211, or visit TRECALbuilders.com. Treycal Builders, quality from start to finish.
As you welcome the new year, we invite you to celebrate with Palmetto State Armory, your go-to destination for all your firearm and outdoor needs. Whether you're a seasoned shooter or just starting out, we've got you covered from handguns and rifles, ammo and optics, and more. We offer a vast selection of top-quality products at unbeatable prices, and our knowledgeable staff are always ready to assist you in finding everything you need. Visit Palmetto State Armory today, either in-store or online, and let us help you make this new year one to remember. Happy New Year from all of us at Palmetto State Armory.
Dave Ramsey here. Do you want your money to work for you rather than you working for your money? Go see my friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. They're not a mega bank and have been serving the Midlands since 1936, offering good old-fashioned customer service and free services. They'll look out for your financial well-being. With 14 locations, check them out today at palmettocitizens.org, federally insured by the NCUA.
All right, thanks again to Mike Morgan on the move with us tonight on Sports Talk. We got recruiting coming up for you, a few other notes, but let's continue to scan the country for some of the top news nuggets of the week, some of the top items to talk about. We welcome in once again another edition of the Port Authority here on Sports Talk. He is Ben Portnoy of the Sports Business Journal. Welcome in, sir. Many travels. How are you?
What's going on, guys? Appreciate you having me.
As always, great having you with us. I saw you were writing today about what was going on with the NCAA, both up in Congress, where people are still talking about trying to get Congress to do something to save the NCAA from itself, and also this lawsuit in Ohio that's been filed against them. So what's your take on all this?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot to discuss. I would say that, starting with the NIL hearing that happened in D.C. today on Capitol Hill, it followed, frankly, a lot of the track that we've seen with a lot of these things where, frankly, it's a lot of talking, a lot of grandstanding, and kind of having the same conversation over and over and over again, which is just kind of what it is. Now, that said, the biggest thing that kind of came out of this, that I thought, at least, was Lori Trahan, the Democratic rep from Massachusetts, said after the meeting that basically, in so many words, she says she doesn't see Congress passing measures on college athletes can be employees or not, or providing the NCAA with an antitrust exemption. Those are functionally the two things that college athletics people are discussing anything with Congress about, period. So, those are the two things that the reasons for why they're having these conversations, basically. If that's not going to happen, it's a lot of, okay, what are we doing here? I think that, it's certainly look, we've been having these conversations over and over and over again for months, right? And I think that this is, the 11th hearing on Capitol Hill now, that there's been a hearing with college sports people, with representatives about this subject, and it hasn't really gone anywhere. Now, there's people in college sports circles that feel optimistic that Congress will pass something, but I, again, kind of have my doubts there.
Conversation about a super conference took place today with Charlie Baker, which I think is in the back of everybody's mind that deals with this, a super conference of the big financial programs that want to go off and just do their own thing and spend that money and do as they please?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think, Charlie Baker was asked today whether he felt like college sports whether super conferences could exist under the NCAA structure. And he basically said yes, in so many words. It's certainly an interesting time. I think there's a lot of thought that if there become super conferences and there becomes this sort of break off of big time college football, whether that would fall under the NCAA's jurisdiction or purview. But for what it's worth, Charlie Baker said he thinks that can still exist and reiterated that to lawmakers today.
Where does it go from here with Capitol Hill?
That's a good question. I think, certainly there will probably be more conversations. I think there's always conversations on this, right? I think that will be part of it. I think that, there's going to be another set of meetings with the NCAA decision makers in April, whether it's the D1 Council, I believe, who will take up some things that Charlie Baker proposed in his proposal about a month and a half ago, or almost 2 months ago now. Now, whether that anything comes of that, we'll see. There's some sort of the bureaucracy of this, that there are committees at the NCAA who are looking at Charlie Baker's proposal and trying to move things forward. And the idea would be that they could enact something by the end of this year, generally speaking. Whether that happens, again, it's sort of, don't hold your breath with a lot of these things. There's a lot of talking and there's not really a lot of action. I think, certainly Charlie Baker's proposal was action, but it may be a little while till we see any more action on that front.
Well, he was quoted as saying that if you convert all of college sports into employment, there is simply no doubt, based on math, that you will lose an enormous number of student athlete opportunities. The money is just not there. Most schools lose money on sports. But I mean, end quote. That's kind of hard for people to stomach when they see that every SEC team now is going to be making about 75, 80 million per year with this new TV contract. And the Big Ten is going to make more than that per team. And the Big 12 is going to make a pretty good chunk. The ACC is, going to make a pretty good chunk, not what those others are making as it stands right now. I think people have a hard time agreeing with that when they see an $80 million check going to a school on an annual basis and more. They're not reducing the amount of money these schools are getting annually. It keeps going up. Does that argument hold water?
I would say this. I get the argument, but I think it's also a product of the functional issues that college sports have and how they spend money, right? And that, let's say insert Power 5 school here makes $100 million a year. The problem is they're spending $100 million a year as well, and that there's been this overspending basically, and there's no attempt to basically be profitable. Now, in the grand scheme and looking, let's say 20, 40 years ago, right? Like college sports were not designed to be profitable entities. They're supposed to be arms of the universities that sponsored sports teams and obviously brought in some money and ticket sales and things like that. But, they weren't meant to be these giant behemoths that they've become. And because of that, you've got a spending pattern with sort of spending all the money you're earning to fund all these other sports. Generally speaking, the money coming from football, and you're not getting any return on investment, basically. And I think that is part of the argument there, and that you've got these schools spending $100 million and saying, hey, we don't have the money. But the reason they say that is because they're spending all this money on other things that frankly they don't make a ton of sense business if you look at just basic business practices.
So as I look at it, if they don't get any relief from Congress, and you kind of indicate based on what you're saying and what you were told and what you've read, that there doesn't seem to be an interest from Congress to help the colleges bail themselves out of this. If they don't get antitrust exemptions, any kind of help from Congress along those lines, how are they going to, it seems like the courts just shoot down every regulation now that the NCAA has had in place or is putting in place, from everything from trying to limit the amount of money that they're spending to trying to limit how many times players can transfer without penalty. The courts are saying you can't do that. You can't do that. So what are they going to do?
I think that's the fundamental question here, right? Is like, what is the answer? And I don't know that there is one. And I think ultimately the answer that's going to happen is that a lot of schools are going to be in deep trouble, because you're going to have a point where probably athletes are going to become employees. They're going to be, they're going to be eligible for things that come with being employees. And that creates a whole host of issues. And that there are some schools that are going to be able to afford it, and there are going to be some schools that don't. And I think that there's probably a breaking point coming. Now, where that line gets drawn, we'll see. Look, there are Power 5 schools that don't make the kind of money that may be needed to do these kinds of things and to operate in the way that college sports is trending, whether it comes to the employment thing. I had someone propose kind of the idea that basically, if you don't find a way to govern college sports and find a way to make the money work, basically, there's a world where instead of sponsoring 20 sport or whatever, I think the D1 minimum is 13, 14 sports to be a Division I school. You're going to have schools sponsor 4 sports, and it's going to be, football, men's and women's basketball, and something else. And whether that happens or not, we'll see. Again, there's a lot of steps to get there, but I think, and then everything else will be club, and maybe it'll be sponsored by the school in some capacity, but it's not going to be in the same way that it is currently. And I think that to me feels like the most realistic option. And I don't even know if it's an option. It may be forced upon sort of college sports administrators and decision makers, because the courts are swinging against the NCAA at basically every point.
And here we have a guy who announced today he's returning to Miami for his 9th season of college football. 9 seasons, 9 years in college football. That's longer than most coaches or head coaches at any one place. And this guy is coming back for his 9th year.
That's Dr. McCormick, tight end at Miami.
Really?
That's right. No, I think you guys are referencing Cam McCormick at Miami. And if we want to play a really fun game, Cam McCormick and I graduated high school a year apart. So I think when he committed to Oregon, I was still a senior in high school. So take that as you will.
I mean, does the guy not? I appreciate his love of college life and college sports, but does he not have a desire like to go on and get out and make a living somewhere doing something?
I don't know about y'all, but like I love the movie Van Wilder, and this is a better story than that. So I don't know. Like this is something else. It's crazy.
You wrote a story this week. I'll let you kind of give us the highlights so folks can look it up. Headline: College football, the cost of winning. A story on the finances of national title winners in the 4-team era as the CFP heads towards a 12-team model next fall. What's the gist of the story?
Yeah, I think the basic gist was, I looked at a lot of financial numbers for kind of what it cost in so many words to win a national title in in the 4-team playoff era. And I think that, the schools that were spending the most money, generally speaking, and certainly the schools that have the most resources, as NIL has become a thing and all of that, have been the schools that are hoisting trophies. And I think that's not a secret necessarily, right? But I think it was a nice way to put sort of numbers to some of these things and see what schools were spending. There's a big chunk of that story that's about Clemson. And I think Clemson's a really interesting case study just because, their spending on football climbed a ton during that span. And frankly, the school was bringing in money and revenues were brought in and jumped. I think if I have the numbers roughly, I think it was like 150% over the course of the 10 years of the 14 playoffs. So some of that's a product of just growing in college sports naturally, but also a fact of Clemson was winning, so more money is coming in. And I think that, it's an interesting way to just look at how schools were spending money over that span and sort of what went into, these are the teams that are winning national titles. Here's what that money looks like. And certainly some interesting insight from some of the folks at some of the NIL collectives involved in at those certain schools as well. That I thought was some interesting insight on how those things have operated and worked. Michigan being one of them, and I thought had some really interesting points to make there.
Absolutely. I just retweeted it for you so our followers can go look at it and possibly read it if they subscribe to the SBJ. What's ahead for you this week?
Hopefully some rest. I think after some time in Houston and Phoenix, I'm very happy to sleep in my own bed for a few days, maybe play some golf and catch a day off here maybe one of these days. But nothing too crazy. Obviously, lots going on the horizon with court cases and NIL hearings and all that. So there will be plenty down the pipe, but ready to catch my breath a little bit here.
Well, you deserve it, man. Enjoy, and we'll catch you next week. We appreciate you.
Appreciate y'all. Thanks for having me. Always fun.
Same here. Ben Portnoy, the Port Authority, with us here on Sports Talk. Okay, after the break, we'll come back with the recruiting report tonight. A lot of the Gamecocks were handing out offers today like cotton candy. So we'll go over all that. Talk about another player South Carolina has some pretty strong interest in. Dabo Swinney made a couple of appearances or more in front of the cameras. We'll tell you about that coming up. Update basketball, update the golf as well. as well. So we'll be back after this break on Sports Talk. Don't go away.
We're with Major Billy Downer of the Department of Natural Resources. Major Downer, it's hunting season in South Carolina this fall, and folks need to be prepared from a legal standpoint.
That's right, Phil. Everyone always needs to buy their hunting license or fishing license. Everyone always worries about losing their license. Well, now that's not a problem anymore because you can keep your license on your phone. That's right. Go Outdoors SC. It's an app. Look for it on your Apple or Android devices. You can buy your license. You can renew your boat registration, and it's all right there on your phone. Remember, Go Outdoors SC in your app store.
I'm attorney Jim Corbett. That's the sound of a big hit on you and your car or truck. I've been an attorney for more than 30 years, helping people who get injured in car wrecks and truck wrecks. If you have serious injuries, call Jim Corbett, 803-765-2968, or email me at jim@jimcorbettattorney.com. That's CORBETT. I don't get paid unless I recover for you. Jim Corbett Attorney, for your best recovery from a big hit, 803-765-2968, or jim@jimcorbettattorney.com.
You've put in the work for your education. The extra early, extra late, extra work. That's because you understand education opens doors to better pay, better opportunities, and a better you. Being educated about playing the lottery is no different. It helps you be a better player, one who knows when to play and when to take a rain check. The lottery's a game, so let's keep it fun. Learn more at sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
George Bryant here with Tsunami Bar Sports, and wow, Tsunami Robbie, there is now an amazing technology that you can use when you train receiving large game without having to endure pain. Please explain.
George, that is the magic combination. I have 3 simple words to define that entire concept. Stimulation, not annihilation. Regardless of your training goals, there is a level of stimulation that is optimal for your desired gains. Tsunami Bar's flexible bar technology meets these demands because the user determines the level of stimulation with the amount of speed and force they impart into the bar or training device.
Hey, this is Phil Kornblut. The Tsunami Bar is a terrific training device, whether you're working on your fitness or your golf game. It's convenient, it's easy to use, and you won't feel beat up afterwards. Be sure to click on the digital ad on SportsTalkSC.com and get 5% off any order using promo code BBB5. Don't wait. Order today.
Touchstone Energy Cooperative members save more on electricity. And members save more on insurance, groceries, healthcare, restaurants, travel, concerts, and sporting events through Co-op Connections. Touchstone Energy is an alliance of the member-owned electric cooperatives. And as a member, the power is yours. Experience the power of Co-op membership with Touchstone Energy and find out how much you can save on electricity and a whole lot more at touchstoneenergy.com.
All right, recruiting time on Sports Talk, but first, it's eating time on Sports Talk as we set the table for a big day tomorrow at Seawells. For those of you who maybe don't catch us every night, don't know what we're talking about, Seawells Catering on Rosewood Drive in Columbia across the State Fairgrounds, they do a daily luncheon buffet Monday through Friday from 11 till 2. It's only $14. Every day is special, but Fridays are extra special, Pat.
Roast Beef Friday, shout out Andy. Tomorrow at Seawells with carved roasted sirloin of beef along with southern fried chicken and shrimp Alfredo. Quite the mix, quite the assortment there. Hey, go wild. Put a little gravy on your chicken, on your beef, maybe even on your shrimp Alfredo. I don't know. It's probably good. And then don't forget also at Seawells, all your local farm fresh veggies, salad bar, and dessert.
Yeah, you better go eat Friday because it's supposed to be so cold on Saturday. We're all going to die. Whew. So you better get your last meal in on Friday before it's too late. And boy, what a menu. Roast beef, delish. Fried chicken, delish. And shrimp what?
Shrimp Alfredo.
Oh, my goodness. Take my breath away.
Beef, chicken, seafood. Quite a trio.
You will come out of there healthy and wealthy because it's not going to cost you a lot. So make sure you get there for that. And, of course, you got something coming up that requires the best in the catering business. Just make that call to Seawells at 803-771-7385. All right, in recruiting, when James Coley came from A&M to South Carolina, of course, he brought his little black book with him. And one guy in that black book, receiver Philip Wright, 6'1", 180, of Destrehan, Louisiana. He is a flash on the track as well, one of the fastest players in Louisiana. Coley was recruiting him for A&M, and then he said when he got to South Carolina, Coley contacted him, and he showed his coaches his film, and they loved his film as well. And so they want him to come to South Carolina. They obviously are going to be recruiting him pretty hard. He's involved with indoor track right now, so the earliest he could visit South Carolina would be March. He plans to make that visit and also one during the football season. He also wants to visit Michigan, LSU, Texas A&M, and Miami. He said Michigan and South Carolina would be his top 2 right now. He said those are standing out to him with the coaches hitting him up and showing that they are interested in him and they like his speed, that he can catch the ball, and that he's not a selfish player because he likes to block as well. And he said one thing he does know about South Carolina is Nick Harbor, and he said he'd love to go head-to-head 100 meters with him. Wright has run a 10.5.9 in the 100 meters and a 21.4.1 in the 200 meters. I mentioned South Carolina handed out a bunch of offers today. Those went to receiver Brian Rowe, Concord, North Carolina, running back Isaiah West of Logan Township, New Jersey, linebacker Xavion Griffin Haynes of Raleigh. Then in the 26 class, defensive back Hakeem Satterwhite of Washington, linebacker Shadarius Tootle. I just had to put it that way. Shadarius Tootle of Mobile, Alabama, defensive end Rodney Dunham of Charlotte, cornerback Sean Johnson, Severn, Maryland, and linebacker, you'll love this, Pat. You ready? Linebacker Thomas Davis Jr.
Ooh, all right.
Of Weddington, North Carolina, 6'2", 205. He is the son of
Panther legend Thomas Davis.
Out of Georgia.
Ooh.
I remember watching him at Georgia. He was the hardest hitter in college football when he was at Georgia.
He had a motor that just never ended, it seemed like. That guy had energy first quarter, fourth quarter, never slowed down.
I think he's from down in Thomasville, Georgia, South Georgia somewhere. Awesome. Clemson target 2026 defensive end Tyler Atkinson, Loganville, Georgia, offered by Southern Cal. Clemson USC target defensive end Isaiah Gibson, offered by NC State. USC and Clemson target defensive tackle Elijah Griffin, expected to visit Florida Saturday. Dabo Sweeney of Clemson today was at a number of different spots, including to see defensive end Bryce Davis of Greensboro, North Carolina, and safety Jordan Young of Monroe, North Carolina. Heathwood Hall, cornerback Onis Conansbanny, was offered by Coastal. Alabama landed a commitment from Washington, freshman quarterback transfer Austin Mack. Alabama signee Jameer Grimsley is going into the portal. Alabama true freshman offensive lineman Caden Proctor is going into the portal. He was an all-SEC freshman team member this year. Offensive lineman Carter Rempf of Camden, son of the Bulldogs head coach, committed to Newberry. Wide receiver Malik Clark of Rock Hill was offered by Duke. And 2026 cornerback Jazavian Currents of South Point, offered by Georgia Tech and Tennessee. There you go, recruiting tonight on Sports Talk. Check it out regularly on our website, SportsTalkSC.com, on Twitter. Use the hashtag STRecruiting, actually on X, formerly known as Twitter, to take you right to it. All right, let me update what's happening out in the golf world. They are playing out in California. They are playing the American Express card. Don't leave home without it. They are playing the American Express in La Quinta, California. And right now, your leader would be Zach Johnson at 10 under after a 62, and Alex Noren after a 62. Then you've got Rico Hoey and Christian Bezudenhout at 9 under, and Scott Stallings at 8 under, Xander Schauffele, Hayden Springer, Patrick Cantlay, Siwoo Kim, Chan Kim, and Justin Lauer and Nick Dunlap. They are all at 8 under. Very tight leaderboard. Also, Justin Thomas, 7 under, 65. Scotty Scheffler, 5 under, 67. Matt Neesmith, 5 under, 67. Bill Haas, 4 under, 68. Ben Martin, 4 under, 68. Will Zalatoris is at 4 under. Carson Young is at 2 under, 70. Ricky Fowler's at 2 under. Andrew Novak, even par 72. Michael Block, even par 72. Kevin Kisner, plus 274. Also in the world of golf, Bernhard Langer announced this will be his final Masters coming up. 2-time winner in Augusta. And got to play one more round, one more competitive round, and then call it a career there. Winthrop leading Asheville 43-36. Towson over Charleston 38-36. Georgia Southern 34, Coastal 33. All right. Appreciate you being with us tonight. Have a great night, a big Friday night for you tomorrow night. Thank you, Pat. And we shall see you tomorrow night right back here on Sports Talk. Have a great night.
WQXL Columbia, W264DF.
From the Bart Fireside Studio, the solution for keeping you warm this winter.
This is